Welcome to
Between Two Wrestlers,
a podcast that tenuously links together wrestling matches and we discuss them and put our own perspective on it. I'm Andrew Bowers, the owner and promoter of North Wrestling, and I'm currently sandwiched between two wrestlers, Rory Coyle and Liam Slater.
Boards, W-Figs, where we used to do the stick figure and wrestling figure animation. And again, the first time that I ever heard Journey, Don't Stop Believing, was on a stick figure compilation of all the guys that were on that board, all the cool guys. And then there was a guy called Insane NJ, and he was rubbish. So the long note hold that you get in Journey was like a clip of like a screenshot of him saying, "Please don't ban me." You get banned all the time.
So for loads of people, I think you can tell a lot by a person with what they associate Don't Stop Believing with. There's a lot of people that are like, it's Glee. For me, it's The Sopranos. For Liam Slater, it's the stick figure animation community that he was heavily involved in.
Yep, absolutely. Genuinely, it's the only thing I think about. Please don't.
I like that every time it comes on, I
please.
think about Tony Soprano, and you think about that guy.
Insane NJ.
Please don't ban me.
Insane NJ, if you're around,
Insane.
please drop me a message.
I love that. That reminds me of, I think when you're like, how old are you and you were doing stick animation?
You never ask a stick animator their age, Bert. Come on.
About 12, 13-ish.
Just, I think like 12, 13 on the internet is, I think, I don't think life will be better than that sometimes.
No.
If I think about what I was doing on the internet, it was 12, 13 was probably like like really finding out what the internet was about. And I was on eFed role play boards, creating wrestlers. And I had my own, of course I did. I had my own wrestling promotion on Yahoo groups.
Nice.
And yeah, I absolutely fucking loved it. It was the halcyon days. I wonder what there's a guy called GR8 Loco who he was so good. I mean, he was probably shite, but like he was the king of the E-Feds. And I would go on Yahoo Messenger and try and convince him to come and role play for my wrestling E-Fed.
So again on W-Figs, it was quite a wide selection of communities, and I tried my hand at pretty much all of them, which is where the basis of like a lot of my media studies comes from. The E-Fed stuff I just could never get my head around. Like it felt like they were all in way too deep, and I was like, I don't know where to start on this. But Pick Feds, where you would take photos of your wrestling figures in various stages of matches, was pretty fun. There was a dude on there, I cannot for the life of me remember his name, but he used to do like loads, like he'd animate like the entrance and the Titantron stuff, and like he'd put like pyro on it and stuff like that. And I was like, this is incredible. Like I loved going on and being like, oh, there's a new episode of whatever he's putting out. Yeah, it was fucking class. Jamie Noble, like as James Gibson, was like the big like top heavyweight for loads of people because he just hit Ring of Honor at that point.
I just got so excited because I thought Jamie Noble was on the boards as well. I was like,
I reckon there are a good amount of wrestlers that were on those boards. I'm sure Chris Brooks was on them. If I've heard conversations correctly, he was probably one of the cool guys that did really cool stuff. He was doing like cool stuff on W-Figs. Like he will have been. I can guarantee it.
Yeah, it's that thing. I have that conversation, when like everyone's like, "Oh, he's so cool. That wrestler's so cool," and I'm like, "He's cool in wrestling." Like, and I think it's that thing of just remembering sometimes.
What about bars? You've called us cool multiple times.
Yeah, in wrestling.
What?
So
cool within our community. I mean,
I
cool.
do as well. Like, to rat out Leon Slater a little bit. Leon's like one of the coolest guys going. And you probably won't listen to this, so it's fine. But Leon used to walk around on his tiptoes as a child.
Why? He's
completely. So even like one of the coolest guys in the UK at this moment in time,
he's talented enough. He
walked around on his tiptoes as a child.
I know I'm gonna go like serious for a second. That is why it's fucking cool, because you've got Liam Slater signing for one of the biggest promotions in America, literally the best wrestler in Britain at the moment, without a doubt. And he was just a little nerd like the rest of us. It's like, I mean, like, he's way cooler than us now, though. Like, he's gone stratospheric on that front. I fired up Extreme Warfare Revenge on a laptop just 2 days ago.
You sent me the logo?
I did. Yeah, I did. And I was really happy because I was booking ECCW, which is a Canadian promotion. And they were like, I was asking Mike Bailey about this because I'm a sad bastard. And he's like best friends with my favorite Extreme Warfare signee who had signed for everyone, Frankie the Mobster. And he actually told me, he was like, Frankie the Mobster's now got a passport. I was like, don't tell me that. Don't. I'm gonna ruin us.
Headlined by Frankie the Mobster.
Oh my god,
confirmed now.
So but ECCW, I used to like then go and seek them out and watch them on YouTube and stuff like that. North draws more than they do on my Extreme Warfare Revenge game. So who's successful now? Who's successful now?
This is a slight tangent.
Yeah. I mean, it's already a slight tangent. We're 6 minutes into a podcast where we're supposed to
be
talking
about... We haven't even said the name of the podcast. I think this is the wrestling equivalent of a mate of mine from school you could sign in Champman.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, definitely.
Nice.
And you could sign him from like a very, very low division team. And the amount of lads that would meet him at like Christmas time in a nightclub and be like, I signed you on Champman. And he'd be like, oh, cheers, lads. And they're like, yeah, you fucking shit. You always get fucking injured. Fucking shit. And he's like, oh, swear to God, I had 1 year where I got injured and now it's forever written into my EA.
Yeah. I worked with a guy who was in like the footy manager or Champman that I played when I was 97, 98. And I was like, oh, wow. I mean, imagine that. But then we all got put in a database for Total Extreme Warfare, which I don't really play. I've played it a couple of times. Now, I know you guys would get put in it, but I got put in it. And I was like, this is ridiculous. But it also shows you wrestling is a tiny little community. if I'm getting put in a game that I thought was big, it must be fucking tiny. But yeah, fucking cool as shit. Should we start the podcast properly? Okay.
But before we start, Liam, dig us up some animations.
Yeah.
Surely I'll try to. What do you want, mine or do you want people that were actually pretty decent?
Definitely yours.
I want yours.
All right, cool. Yeah,
I want yours, and then I want the best one as well.
I don't want no Warrior Dragon XOXOs. I want
I reckon
postmodern Liam.
What was your
XO?
What was your username?
God, what was my name? So my middle name's, I'll just give away all my personal details here. My middle name is Joseph, so I was LJS07 for a while. I had like a handle that was like no gimmicks needed or something along those lines at one point. That might have been like my tagline, like, look at me, like, oh, I'm a postmodern pro wrestler, even at like fucking 12.
That. I also like that, tag with me and the joke's on you, all the gimmicks.
And I love it.
No gimmicks needed. I like that.
I had another one as well.
We have a show called No Gimmicks.
And it's just all gimmicks. But yeah, I'll try and find it. But yeah, that was my name, LJS07 for a while. There was a guy called MCK07 or something along those lines, or just MCK, and we shared a birthday. That was the link. He was a cool guy. I hope he's doing okay.
If any of these guys are listening to this podcast, which the chances are very slim, unless they followed Liam Slater's career very closely.
I don't think they will have done.
Please get in touch. Were they just not into wrestling or
it was just
British wrestling?
It was as we were kids and stuff like that, and all that sort of stuff. Just people just end up drifting away and stuff like that. So I never kept in contact with him. I had a couple of them on MSN.
I'm going to make a shout out to a guy that I used to role play with. That sounds bad. Let's call it a guy I used to E-Fed with, who we always talked about starting a wrestling promotion. His name was Dr. L. That was his name on Yahoo Messenger, and we talked about booking the Donny Dome. That's a memory that I've unlocked, and I don't know where that had been before. So if he's ever listening,
your podcast.
I think, well, we're 10 minutes in now, so we haven't even told you what the name of the podcast is or whatever. So, and today we're talking about CM Punk versus Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero from IWA Mid-South. Last time out, we did Eddie versus Rey from Halloween Havoc, and obviously a not so tenuous link on this one is Eddie and Rey.
It's a double chain.
It's a double chain. This was from the 1st of March 2002. You can see this on YouTube for free. IWA Mid-South was a very pivotal promotion of varying quality.
Yes.
It was a deathmatch promotion in its kind of in its roots. And my recollections of IWA Mid-South was CM Punk's home promotion, Colt Cabana and all of that type of stuff. Ace Steel.
Chris Hero was a prominent figure there as well.
Yeah, he was. And they were almost like a precursor to what then became Ring of Honor, I think, and what Ring of Honor used quite a few of their guys. And they're kind of the non-deathmatch style, I think, came from that. This match got a 7.84 rating on Cage Match, so it's a little bit less than the Rey and Eddie from Halloween Havoc, but it was a super important. It's a super important match. It's a very specific period of time, and I think it's kind of researching it confirmed to me that I think Eddie Guerrero is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, if not my favorite wrestler. And I think this is such an important part of what then became like his most famous run in wrestling, which was kind of from 2002 through to his death, really. Eddie had been in quite a bit of trouble. He'd had a car accident on New Year's Eve 1999, and he got addicted to painkillers. So this was kind of the start of his. It was kind of the start of his downfall, unfortunately. He had then been sent to rehab in May 2001. And what I thought was really interesting, which I hadn't realized, is he missed the whole of the Invasion angle at this point. So he'd kind of come out the back end of the Radicals. He'd had his European title run, and he was on the up. But they'd kind of disbanded the Radicals, and they were all doing their own single things. It was very clear that Eddie and Chris Benoit were the two that were going to get we're going to get a push out the back end of it. And Eddie was really showing what he could do at that point. I remember the European title, and I fucking loved it. I loved that whole, it's again, like showing that from a promoter's point of view, the importance of the mid-card. And I think the importance of the mid-card then was, and I think that's something that gets overlooked nowadays as well, is that mid-card wrestling is pretty much your bedrock of what makes a really good show. So, yeah, so unfortunately, Eddie was then sent by John Laurinaitis, and mainly JR was sent to rehab. During that time, it looked like he was going to come back at the back end of 2001, but he was then arrested for drink driving. He was then fired by the WWE. And I know he said he was fired. I think he was kind of like put on gardening leave, because there was still, JR was still very hot on Eddie. Eddie was very much rated quite highly, but his problems were really stacking up on him. I think he was having problems at home. I think his addiction problems were getting out of the way. Just as a side note, it was also reported that Rey Mysterio was at this point going through his own battles with drink, which is quite interesting. And I think it kind of gives you that backdrop of wrestling. I think of WWE as this pinnacle, and you have this opportunity to be a millionaire who performs in front of tens of thousands of people per week, millions on TV. But the reality of it is that you're quite close to then slipping back to IWA Mid-South and I still think that's quite relevant to today as an industry. But
yeah,
I think it's quite interesting, to just see that the fragility of your career. So did you guys know all about that? Did you know all about that start? I've got a bit more to go into after that, but in terms of why Eddie left WWE, were you aware of that at the time?
I didn't know any of this. I was watching the Invasion angle.
So yeah, so at the time I was unaware. It's only in retrospect that you sort of go back and look at that. But yeah, I don't even. I'm very young in my viewing years here, so I maybe clocked that he disappeared, but not to the extent that like he was out doing other stuff. But I didn't know anything outside of the WWF at the time existed. Obviously, there was WCW and ECW, but I didn't.
It's a subtle reference
some
to
Japan stuff as well.
Our age there, Liam. I appreciate that. You just called us old. I appreciate it.
It's all right.
I think I wasn't exposed to this, and even IWA until years later. So I didn't have access to any tapes or anything of any of this stuff. So I would have been heavily embroiled in DDP was stalking the Undertaker's wife. That's where I was. When this was going down, I was like, oh my God, it's that lad that my mates told me was very good.
Underrated angle, that. Underrated angle. Underrated angle by an underrated. I think DDP and WWE, I think it's quite well documented, completely underused and like underutilized. I think as well that he was like a bit old.
So how long does this indie run last?
Months.
Early 2002 is kind of when he hits the independent. He wrestles Super Crazy in Ring of Honor's first show, I think. And I remember reading up on it. Dave Meltzer gives a bunch of kind of reports on it, and Ring of Honor's like looked at as, oh shit, these are quite an interesting promotion that aren't making the same mistakes as the other ones. He then comes over to like he wrestles in FWA over in the UK in the King of England tournament.
Him and Doug Williams is on challenge.
Yeah, I remember seeing that quite a bit because it was obviously replayed quite a bit on the Wrestling Channel. I love the Wrestling Channel.
Man, the Wrestling Channel was fucking best.
I don't know if you know this story, Liam. There's and this is like I've heard this story via like one or two people, where this sounds like it's the period of time where he got in contact with a well-known UK promoter who ran the camps, and somebody was in the office and the phone was ringing and he answered the phone. I can't do the accent. He's a fairly well impersonated person. And he goes, what? Hey,
I mean, you're doing it.
Never fucking heard of him, and slammed in the phone. Wow. That's the version of the story that has trickled its way through the wrestlers, but it sounds like it kind of lines up, especially if he was over in the UK doing stuff, which I find amazing. Obviously, looking at like retrospect, but even then, if I'd have seen a poster for a local show, or I had been on holidays at Butlin's, and Eddie Guerrero had walked out, I'd be like, "That's Eddie Guerrero." Like at least he was still a recognizable, like he was a name.
I'm trying to think of like who he'd be comparable today to, and I think probably legitimately at the level of like, say, because I think I read about this online and people were saying, oh, it's kind of like Danielson coming from now, and I don't think it's quite like that because Danielson had a bigger run and Eddie hadn't had his WWE Championship run at that point. He hadn't won the belt. The most he'd won, I think he'd won the Intercontinental title. He'd definitely done a big European title run. Cruiserweight title in WCW, so he was well known. So I'm kind of thinking like maybe like a Hangman Pagey kind of level, something like that, maybe a bit higher.
So I think Hangman's too big because he's had the belt. I would actually compare him to a Dominic Mysterio. Like he's had a couple of runs, he's got a little bit of notoriety, and people are going like, "Oh, this Dominic's pretty all right." And then if he was to disappear for 6 months and then bring him onto this, there'd be a lot of people who'd be like, oh,
he's really good,
yeah, I know him. And also it's a different time period. Like now that you've got the internet, like everybody knows everything.
I think that's true.
Like at this point in time, if you don't know, you don't know.
Is he, sorry, is it at this time period, he's not been released?
So officially, yes. He had been. Officially,
he'd actually been like, but I suppose back then there's not as much of a, like Liam said, it's not a case of a tweet goes out and it's like,
he hadn't been future endeavored.
Yeah, that's what I kind of mean.
They say on comms that he gets an injury. Like they write him out by being like, Eddie Guerrero's got a tricep injury or something like
Albert
that.
Injured him.
And then he's not seen for months.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things in his bio or a biography of him or a couple of documentaries where JR talks about it quite a lot, where he talks about how he tried to keep in touch with Eddie for a period of time. I think it was it was very clear that they wanted him to come back. They wanted him to do well, but the arrest in November 2001 is what kind of pushed it over the edge a little bit for them, where they were like, he needs to go and get himself sorted. And I think that was the kind of catalyst for Eddie to go, I'm going to go back on the independents. There's a quote from Eddie where he talks about standards, and it was the first match he did on the independents, and I think he said, there's like 100 people in attendance, and he still went out and did his absolute best, and he realized it didn't matter whether there was one person or 70,000 people there. He just wanted to do
I've
the best
literally
for
got
himself.
that as a note.
Yeah.
I've got that as a note for this match.
And I think that's clear. He has a philosophy. He talks about his philosophy of working on the independents. And I think this is one that needs to be relayed back to a lot of people kind of working on the indies now, so his quote was, I've always believed you can put somebody over and still get yourself over if you do it right. As long as the people get a great match, that's all they remember. And I think that's just like, I think that for me, when I hear that, is how he wrestled, and he didn't care whether he went over. He didn't care who won, who lost. If you put on a great match, that's all that people give a shit about. I was like, yes, Eddie. I think that's a great attitude to take.
Yeah, I completely agree. Absolutely. Like, as long as the circumstance is right, winning and losing, it does matter, but it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. In the long run of stuff, it doesn't matter. It can be helpful to like boost people and put people in the right directions, but like people can take a loss and it mean more than getting a win.
It's always contextual, right? So I think if you go back to the Eddie Ray one, we talked about that with the mask, and he didn't want to take the mask, and Eddie fought for that, for not losing the mask. And I think that just shows exactly the kind of person that he was at that point. Just to kind of go back, the other kind of indies that he wrestled for at this time, he did a tour, a couple of tours, or I think it was a tour in March. Sorry, he did it at New Japan. It was predominantly 6-man tags with Black Tiger and the Team 2000 stable as a heel stable. He has the odd singles in Japan one, which I hadn't looked at, but was against a very young Shibata, which is interesting. He also wrestles for a company very close to my heart, Australian promotion called WWA. They hold a special place in my heart, not only because Double J was part of the promotion, but they ran a couple of shows in Newcastle. I went to see the very first one, and it had like Conan on comms. I think Bret Hart was there. Buff Bagwell versus Stevie Ray. Our friend Gangrel defeating Luna Vachon in a
Big
Black Metal
Gangers.
match. Big Gangers in an intergender match in 2002 at a family show. Can you believe it?
Guy's ahead of his time all the time.
Yeah. And unfortunately, those two shows, I think one happened, the one that I went to happened in December 2001, and then the next one after that happened the next December. So we missed Eddie Guerrero, because the Eddie Guerrero Indies run is actually quite short. It's only a couple of months. So yeah, unfortunately, I missed Eddie. Didn't go on that one. He wrestled in Australia against like Psychosis and Juventud Guerrera, which is like, I would quite like to find those matches as well. So 1 month after this match, Eddie returns to WWF television. He returns on an episode of Raw where he attacks Rob Van Dam. This apparently comes off the back of this match, and then what he then subsequently does. WWF were in the midst of signing Rey Mysterio. Rey was, and this is, I didn't realize this, because Rey comes back in June, or comes to WWF in June. He drops the mask. He drops the Rey Mysterio Jr. part as well. And the reason why he wasn't on any TV or part of the Invasion angle was that he was sitting out his Turner contract. So he had a contract with Turner up to June 2000 or May, June 2002. And they were obviously all on big bucks and were like, I can't sign for WWF because I'll negate all of this money. But I thought it was really interesting because it just completely, if you look at the Invasion angle, and a lot of people look back, me included, and go, man, like they've dropped the ball on that. Classic wrestling logistical issues and contractual issues were the reason why you had Sean Stasiak as like the Mark Jindrak as the head of the Invasion.
Couldn't fill the car. Like that's what you're always on about, like filling cars and stuff. And they just couldn't fill the car. They just had to fill it with random Joes.
Yeah, trainees. Power plant trainees. what happens then is Eddie's career is then kicked off, culminating in him winning the WWE World Heavyweight Championship from Brock Lesnar later on in the year. Good. Yeah, which is an incredible run after that. But again, it all comes back down to this match. So
I think, like, for me, this is a transitional point for Eddie, going from 2001 Latino Heat to Eddie Guerrero coming back and being I lie, I cheat, I steal, or as my dad liked to say, I lie, I cheat, I do a bit of washing. That was like a constant go-to, because he'd just be like, what does that guy say? I lie, I cheat, I do a bit of washing. So this is a transitional point where you can see that formation coming through, but this is like the last 2001 version of Eddie Guerrero.
There's a quote from CM Punk of this going into this match, and he said this in 2019. People should know how good Eddie really was. He was in a rough spot, recently fired, home front was turbulent. He came to the show and looked tired. He said to me, I hate three-ways. If it's okay with you, can you and Ray put something together and just call it to me in the ring? I wasn't sure that was possible, but you didn't miss a beat. And you, Ray, so open and given to a little punk indie kid, you laid out a masterpiece, and I wasn't sure I could keep up. One of the early times I remember being in the ring and thinking to myself, this is fucking magic, a pleasure and honor. He also is quoted as saying, I thought, this is CM Punk, I thought I was pretty damn good until I got into the ring with Eddie and Ray. What I found really interesting about this was that Rey Mysterio lays out the whole match, basically. This is his match. I think it shows as well, but it also shows how close Eddie and Ray were and how good Eddie was to just go, and how good Ray was as well to be able to kind of go, I'm going to put this together and Eddie's going to not miss a beat. So I think what's really interesting is just that the backdrop to this small little indie match, and then kind of like the consequence after it, which was in wrestling, it never really turns out to be a good thing, but actually turned out to be quite a positive, with a tragic ending, but quite a positive kind of run that Eddie goes on off the back end of it. I just think, yeah, it's a really interesting snapshot in time when you watch this match,
especially if you also factor in CM Punk into that as well. So we've talked about Eddie, we've talked about Ray, but then to take CM Punk, who is, like an upcoming indie darling. He's over at IWA Mid-South, but he doesn't get his like real ROH run until like 2004, 2005, to which then he gets signed. You then think that he goes to the WWE and has quite a major feud with like Ray at one point as well. And like has interactions that way. A lot of CM Punk's hype is that he's in this match. How many other people could have been in this match that then this just doesn't stand up to it? There's a good couple of people that were at IWA Mid-South that could have been in that match. Chris Hero's one of them who could have been in that place. Ace Steele's on commentary on this. I don't see there's a reason why he couldn't be wrestling. I think he actually he's challenging for the belt on the next show, which is why he's on comms. Colt Cabana could have been in this match. There's a bunch of people that could have been in this, but it is interesting that it happens to be CM Punk.
So what happens actually on this weekend? It was a double header, IWA Mid-South double header. I guess I'm not spoiling it at this point. Eddie wins the belt. He then goes and wrestles in a singles match against CM Punk. Night, and Punk wins the belt back. But yeah, I think what's really interesting is like you've got, I mean, it could have been Colt Cabana, it could have been Ace Steel, it could have been Axel or Ian Rotten. It could have been, like, if you go back through the rest of the card is shit. Like, there's not a lot of good stuff in it. And it gets a really low rating.
That's IWA Mid-South through and through. Like, not that they ever plugged us, but on IWTV, there is a bunch of IWA Mid-South. And I go back and watch some like Tracy Smothers stuff at some point just because he's fun to watch. But like the cards are just, I love them because they're just awful, but there is some rubbish that's happening on those shows.
I think what's really interesting as well is Punk in this, and looking at his style and kind of looking at how this match was kind of put together and how he was used in it. If we kind of like jump into the start of the match then, I just think the differences in the looks of the wrestlers here, and bear in mind that Punk looks like this albeit gets a bit more like, I think his gear gets a bit better when he gets to Ring of Honor and stuff like that, but not by a whole lot. He looks like such a local wrestler compared to Eddie and Ray. Like, it's to me quite staggering, like how different they are. So my first kind of, did you also notice he carried in, you've got the IWA Mid-South Heavyweight title, which is a really horrible brown kind of title, but he's also carrying, and I couldn't work out why this was, a WWF replica tag team title. Now, I know what they used to do back in the days, because it was really expensive to get belts, is that used to just get replica belts and just get like their name put on it, rather than WWF. But I have no idea why he was carrying a WWF tag team title belt.
Just like, again, like you're saying, often it's an easier way to get a replica belt and put a sticker on it. Have the belt of a defunct company and then put a sticker over that for tag team championships.
Yeah, maybe we should do that for Wrestle Carnival. Grab their belts. Well, anyway,
I may possess a tag belt from a double defunct promotion. I think that's what
that is absolutely what I'm referencing.
And I definitely didn't find it again last night, and I was like, "Oh, I forgot about this." Looked at the plate and went, "Oh."
Was it in the boot of your car?
It was lying on top of. It was lying behind a stack of video players.
They won't be listening to this podcast. They can have it back, I'm sure.
I like this look from Punk. Like, I don't mind. I don't mind this look, but I see what you mean. Like, they look. There's like a real stark difference. Partly too, like, it's size and tan and oil. But I kind of like the Punk. I think now when you see Punk do the shorts, it's always a reference to this in the Ring of Honor stuff. But yeah, I know what you mean. When you watch this now, I'm kind of like, he's just wearing a pair of shorts. Yeah. Like, it's like watching Liam. He's just wearing whatever old shorts he's found. The only thing is, he's not showing as much as leg as
that's the key to it.
Liam Slater does, because those shorts.
If I was to go back here, I would say to Punk, you need to chop off all the pant leg. Just once it starts to go from hip to leg, that's the point.
Especially if he's wrestling on a family-friendly show. You want the mums to come up after you afterwards.
It happened.
And get a picture of you in the shorts.
Genuinely, it happened. A woman came up. She's like, "Can I have a picture?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And she's like, "Those shorts." Ooh. And I was like, doing my job.
We know what we're doing. He appeals to the mums, and I appeal to the delinquents and goths.
Yep.
We know
what's also interesting here is that Punk has pro wrestling boots on and not kick pads.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I think that's maybe the one thing that makes it go, all right, it's a weird setup, but you're wearing boots. And also wearing a very long undershirt as well. Just saying.
I also
analysing the man's pants now in intimate detail.
What's quite clear is IWA Mid-South very much has its own vibe. That's a nice way of me saying the ring is shit. That bottom rope. Like, it looks...
I fucking love it, though.
It's just so
I also love that the turnbuckles are just taped. There's no pad on there. They're just taped more than the ropes are.
Yeah, they're just like a fat piece of the rope. Like, I kind of quite like even though I said, like, I didn't have a lot of tapes, I didn't have access to tapes of this at the time. I've somehow inherited a shitload of VHS tapes that have a lot of IWA Mid-South on them.
That's what happens when your whole gimmick is VHS tapes.
Yeah, and I would just pop them in, and I really love where this is. I love that there's like a Bonanza fucking thing in the. Is it like I don't even know what type of scoreboard it is. Is it a bingo thing or something?
I don't know whether that's like a basketball scoring or something like that.
There's like a little hat that looks like a tuck shop.
Yeah. And
the most important thing, watching over all the wrestling, is Big Jesus.
Is he?
Now my dog's barking.
I didn't know he was.
There's a cross in shot for most of the fucking hard cam.
I think that tells you everything about the actual geographical setting of where we're at as well, and like the kind of maybe the fan base. So yeah, I think the triple. I think what I went back to, because I did the research on this before I watched the match, so I kind of had a bit more of a. I kind of wish I'd just gone in and watched it and then gone, oh, okay, right, and had my eyes opened after that. But my first thing, if I go back to the quote from CM Punk about triple threats, as two wrestlers, what are your thoughts towards triple threats? Because I know as a promoter, I go multi-mans. I'm all right because I can see how 4 people can kind of be paired off to 2, and you can have 2 off and 2 on at any one time. It kind of makes sense to me. Triple threats, I always kind of shy away from, because you've always just got one guy or one girl kind of kneeling at the ropes, selling badly, waiting for their spot. So yeah, what are your thoughts on triple threats?
I prefer singles matches and single tag matches. Yeah. Multi-person matches.
What a surprise.
Aren't really for me. I don't massively like them.
I don't think any wrestlers.
If anything, I find them a bit of a pain in the ass. So come to North on the next show where the Postmodern Sick Boys take part in a triple threat tag team match.
Thanks.
Lucha Rules officially as well.
All right, okay, right. Well, I'm cool. I'm back in again. I'm back in the room.
Yeah,
I think it's like a shared view, though, isn't it? Like a lot. Like I've heard like Austin make reference to the fact that he doesn't like triple threats either. I don't fucking like them. But like I generally don't like. I don't really enjoy watching them a lot of the time as well, for that same reason of like, it is kind of 3 singles matches just sliced together.
Limiting story you can tell with them, I think, is the issue.
Was this like I quite enjoyed this, and when you said about the quote about Rey putting the match together, if that sentence had been the other way around and Eddie put the match together, I would have believed it. Because it does flow real nice after that first exchange. And even the first exchange is really good because Eddie's just in character. He's just feet on the ropes, watching them wrestle, going, yeah, gone away and wrestle, lads, you dafties. And then he does get involved, gets ping-ponged around a bit. But there's some real nice bits in this that do flow well. There's like the attempt for the 619. And again, it's like these little bits where like Eddie's character is coming through, and you're starting to see that lie, cheat, steal version of him, where he's just like, he sees the 619 coming, he's like, fuck that. He said, walks away. I'm getting the fuck out of here.
I think right at the start of the lockup sequence was my favorite bit, to kind of like example that of they're like 3 of them are kind of testing each other out, especially when you realize this is being called to Eddie in the ring, and they're kind of like testing each other out, and then Eddie goes to lock up, takes a step back whilst the other 2 actually lock up. And I think it's a really nice way. And then, like you were saying, he goes and sits in the corner. I think it's a really nice way of very quickly establishing who sits where and what the kind of role of each wrestler is in the match. And for Eddie to kind of clock that straight away, I'm just like, fucking, that's
now,
so good.
Not to say that wrestlers lie, but it's quite a nice story to...
Full of shit.
It's quite a nice story to be like, yeah, and Eddie Guerrero didn't know anything. Now, I watched the CM Punk getting ready for the Royal Rumble match video on YouTube recently where he goes to NXT. And I'm pretty sure in that he talks about the fact that he's never done a springboard before he comes to WWE. And he does it because then people, because he's trying to do stuff that people aren't doing. He does a springboard in this match. So...
yeah, a bad one.
Never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Do I think that Rey put this match together? Yes. Do I think that Eddie had minimal input into this? Yes. Do I think that a general structure will have been called to Eddie before they got in? Yes. I don't think that they're in there going, do this, Eddie. Fair fucks to him if it is, but some of the timing on the movement and the flow of stuff is so good that the timing of him getting into place is so on point that he needs to at least have some awareness that spot is happening like that.
I think the likelihood is you got a really tired Eddie from traveling and from all the other problems that he's going through. I think he'd wrestled in kind of the February was very busy for him. So this was like the 1st of March, the week before he'd been in Australia. So, I mean, that in its own right. He'd been wrestling in New Jersey, Chicago, obviously. So he'd been here, there and everywhere. The likelihood of him just sitting in a corner and just going, just whatever. Yep, that's fine. Yep, that sounds good as well. Eddie, are you okay doing this? Yep. That's fine. And then putting it together. Because I would imagine you got Ray in there who's going, I'm going to make sure Eddie's okay. You've then got Punk going, I just want to do whatever you guys want to do. Probably. And there are some funny spots that he throws in here. I think the springboard was a weird one as well. Trying to do a springboard in that top rope of that ring is an interesting choice.
Ray also uses a bottom rope to pop into a Rana. And fair fucks to him for looking at that rope and going, yeah, I'll commit to this.
And he does well with it. I think that's another one. One of the questions I was going to say was like, it's quite obvious that there's a big gulf between Punk and Ray and Eddie. I don't necessarily think it's like Punk's bad. That's not what I'm saying here, but you can tell the difference in quality. You can tell that I think obviously Eddie and Ray have worked at a much higher standard. What would you say, as from a wrestler's point of view, what would you say are the things that kind of stand out to you that make, them look so much better than CM Punk in this? For me, I think a really good example is the springboard or the utilizing of the ropes is that Ray's balance is just unbelievable to actually pull off something like that. Whereas Punk kind of nearly falls flat on his face when he tries it.
So I was being very quiet because there appears to be a rumble happening in my house between two canines. That was a bit that kind of stood out to me was I'm assuming he's on about, because he does a springboard blockbuster, but he also does a springboard into the ring. And there's a slip on that springboard into the ring where I'm kind of like,
why did you try that?
In the ring, I'm like, oh, fucking, why are you doing a springboard? There's a couple of little bits as well. Like, there's just he's like, it's weird. Like, they look like they're having their stuff looks a little bit rough in places, which adds to it. It's kind of like what we said about the Havoc match. There's like an aggression, whereas his looks like a little bit, there's a couple of extra steps here and there that you only notice if you're watching it with a fucking like nerdy wrestler thing. And like it's something that like if I was to watch myself wrestle, like if I was to watch me in Kingston, I would notice me taking 4 more extra steps than he does on everything. And I don't know if it's like just this like reps or like it's probably was a mixture of like reps and confidence and just they've done it so many times that they don't even need to think about it anymore. There's a couple of bits like I noticed like even when he grabs. I like it though, like because it does, like it kind of plays into the story a little bit. His selling as well is a little bit like indie fake compared to theirs, which is weird because they're like polished wrestlers that obviously sell. But I don't know if that's the translation of like 2 TV guys translating into what feels like a very indie show, whereas he's an indie guy that's looking to translate to the TV show. So sometimes like it sounds like a little bit smaller, so a little bit like.
I think what's interesting is if you go back and just look at like the length of the match, I know that just sounds a bit mad, but it's 11 minutes 55, which I think is such a nice, concise it's not the main event of the show, but it's a heavyweight title match. It's 11 minutes 55. If you then go and look at the other matches that Punk, like the other defenses that he has around that time, he wrestles Chris Hero in a tables and ladders match for 45 minutes. There's then a gauntlet match before that for 45 minutes. There's a 2 out of 3 falls match with Chris Heroes, which is 31 minutes. And all the matches with Eddie, he has 3 matches with Eddie. He has one after this, a singles match where he wins the belt back the day after 16 minutes. Then a month later, he wrestles in another 3-way with Colt Cabana and CM Punk Eddie Guerrero. It's 12 minutes. And for me, it just seemed like there was not a lot of, I think it's a really interesting point of what you make with Punk there, the extra steps. With Eddie and Ray, there's just all the fat's trimmed from it. And everything is like, this is why we do it. There's a point to it. Bang, bang, bang. But with Punk, there are a couple of extra steps in it, I think, which is really, I think it's a really interesting point.
For 2 points to come off the back of that. One is the amount of time that these guys have been wrestling. So, as we've said, Eddie, Ray, TV wrestlers, They've had pretty much the entirety of the 90s wrestling plus. So they've both got 10 years plus under their belt. If I'm correct in thinking, I believe CM Punk starts training in 98, 99. He's at least out and
1997.
He's out and doing matches in 98 and 99. So he has a couple of years under his belt at this point, 3-4 years, and they are triple, quadruple that amount. So he's definitely going to be behind, and the TV season and just the amount of matches that they've had. So you can see why he's a step behind. You can see why like he's a little bit clunky in places, and also it's CM Punk and he's kind of clunky anyway. The other point to factor in is I think IWA Mid-South and what they're doing is there's a group of them, the indie lads, that are going, we're going to do what they did in the 80s. We're going to do long matches, which translates then into Ring of Honor, where they're also doing long matches. But there's this definite feel of let's do as much time as possible when it comes to these title matches. Like I'm pretty sure Punk and Hero have like 90-minute matches.
Yeah. There's a 90-minute Iron Man match or something like that a little bit later on, which I don't think I couldn't sit through.
There's
that.
part of my head that goes, I could do that. And then I try and do long matches and I'm like 15 minutes and I'm like, I've done everything. I've literally done everything that I can do. What else could I do?
Well, there's just a lot of like rest holds, isn't there? And there's a lot of like walking around the crowd, grab them by the hair. I'm going to throw you into this wall. Now we're going to walk all the way around. I'm going to throw you into this wall. Right, that's taking up 5 minutes.
I did enjoy. Do you remember when GCW did that 24-hour live stream? I watched pretty much the entirety of that because I'm a loser. I want to say it's Jordan Oliver and Tony Deppen that do an hour-long Iron Man match that ends in a draw. And then the next block of the hour is like just this GCW signing hour. And they go, fuck that, we're keeping going. So they do a 2-hour match. I watched all of it. I very much enjoyed it. I highly rate Jordan Oliver. He's very good. Do we have Jordan Oliver coming to North at some point? Maybe. Is that...
Maybe we do. Yeah, well, he's doing this thing, like he's doing a really extended European tour, which I think is great. Like, it's really difficult. You want to balance off like flying people over versus people flying over themselves and stuff like that. But if you come over and you Jordan Oliver's really thrown himself into it. Like, he's getting bookings pretty much every weekend. Like, pretty high profile ones, although there's some high profile British promotions that haven't booked him. Like,
what are you doing? John Oliver's well good.
Like, yeah, there's that stupid attitude in British wrestling sometimes where it's like, well, they've booked him, so we're not going to book him. I'm like, oh, God's sake, just book the best wrestlers, for God, please. But yeah, he's really good. But yeah, he'll be in North at some point. But yeah, I mean, it's very likely that he's going to be a part of a tournament format in North where there's a 10-minute time limit. So I think that tells you everything about how I feel about matches that go any longer than like 15 or 20 minutes. I just don't think there's any need for it. Like, I don't. But just to give you a backdrop of Liam's viewing habits, I think it was last WrestleMania weekend where Liam said he wasn't going to watch anything. I think he watched
what a liar.
I think he was
what a liar.
I think he tells himself that he's not going to watch any of it, and then I think he watched every single indie show going.
So
I think there's one.
I ended up getting Fight TV Plus or Fight Plus, where the Collective was on the GCW stuff. I watched every show bar the Santino Bros first one, and I think there was. I did watch Emo Fight. There was a lot of.
You did.
There was a lot of stuff that happened that I wasn't massively infused around. I also watched the Ring of Honor card, which had the best two matches of the WrestleMania weekend, Eddie Kingston and Claudio Castagnoli, and Shibata and Wheeler Yuta. And I'm not a huge Wheeler Yuta guy, but that was a real good match. And then I watched chunks of Mania, and then wanted to die.
So going back to this match, I think there's not, because it's such a short match, there's not a lot, I think, to talk about the actual match itself. I would definitely just go and watch it, because weirdly enough, it's actually captured quite well. I think that's one thing I thought. There's actually like, whereas the quality is questionable, and I think the quality's obviously dropped as time's gone on. It's actually captured quite well, and actually you get quite a lot of the action in frame. Like, it's framed well. You don't miss a lot of the stuff. Eddie and Rey are like, Eddie especially, are very aware of where the cameras are. So the times where he's selling and letting, because I will say Rey and Punk do most of the lifting in this match. You're not thinking, it didn't feel clunky at all. Whereas a lot of this stuff can feel really clunky, and you have to be, I think, to watch IWA Mid-South now, you have to be a real wrestling fan to go back and have like a vested interest to, as to why you're going to watch it.
There's a weird thing on the production. It's a bit, and this is like something I bang on about a lot, is like, and more so now when I watch, when I watch the Rumble, I found it easier to watch because the level of cuts was less and stuff, because it's almost like someone left the company. On this, like, quite often it'll go from the hard cam, it'll go to a reverse shot then, which I find a little bit weird and disorientating at times. But for this, it kind of helps, because quite often on three-ways, there is that problem that we mentioned of like just someone is there in shot. And there's a couple of occasions in this where like they're not in the shot, so it does become a little bit more of a genuine. And I don't think it's by design. I think it's just fucking coincidence and just sheer luck. Particularly in the, I think Eddie goes for the O'Connor roll on Mysterio, and Punk's at the apron, and he hits the sunset through. You don't see Punk in the shot until they hit the ropes, which is quite nice. But yeah, it's like I love that. I love a shipbuilding in the background. I think this is where we all disagree. So when we're talking about the collective, I love sometimes I love a well lit room.
Yeah, I know.
Then quite often when I watch wrestling, I'm like, that room's too bright.
I think with North, like it's like a dimly lit room, and I like that vibe, and I think it works well sometimes. But for this one, I think it was really good. I also think, just to add to kind of like the choice of shot, I would imagine from experience of kind of operating at this level, I don't do the edits now, but back in the day, it's not choosing the best shot, it's choosing not the worst shot. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's going, this is the angle that we're going to choose because the referee was standing in the way of this one, or the cameraman was like this for that one, or so I think it works really well. Like, and again, you wonder how much of that is just the awareness of like Eddie and Rey kind of going, well, I'm going to be out the ring for this part, or I'm going to be down here for this part, or the hard cam's there, so I'm just going to make sure that I'm not in the way of that, or I think that kind of ring awareness is always.
It definitely helps.
Really,
I also think that sometimes, like, it definitely comes down. I don't want to say luck and like discard like the effort that goes into it, but like the look of what, as in good luck, the look of what that ring is like is helpful, because that ring could look like it could be different and it could totally ruin the vibe. So my cat's currently battering itself in a mirror. Which is good. I'm glad that we've all got animal antics going on today. How the building is all adds to it. The camera work, I think, is just, there's probably elements of it that it's just lucky that it sits in that fashion. Not to discredit the work that goes into it, but I do think that you could have this in a multiple different places and venues and promotions, and it just wouldn't hit the same as it does in IWA Mid-South. But then I do think that the way that then they do produce stuff is the reason why it ended up being on like tape traders lists and stuff like that, because of how cool it looks and because of the way that it all sits.
Yeah, I think the backstory of it all as well, with the backstory of Eddie and where he was, Rey hadn't debuted on WWF at the time. Punk was very much an up and comer. I think if this had been done in like TNA 2004, like early TNA, it wouldn't get talked about at all. I don't think it would be, with good production, I don't think it would have been talked about. So the fact that it's in this shonky ring in like Illinois somewhere, I think really helps it when you realize like because the match is really talking about this is the lowest that this is Eddie's lowest ebb at that point in his career, and it really fucking looks like it. However, they pull a really good match out of it, and it's actually still quite watchable. And I think I will say, yeah, I agree. Like, to not take the kudos for the work. Actually, like, I've got it running here. Some of the camera shots, like the way that the hard cams follow them, it's pretty
they
well
do a lot of, there's this real nice thing. There's a lot of like zooms, but rather than cut before or after the zoom, they leave it in, and it's got this nice, like, I think we've mentioned it before, it's got a nice like kind of voyeuristic feel. And even Punk at the end when he's selling, the zooms, like, I think it might be from the hard cam, but it's through the ropes, and it looks very kind of fan cammy, kind of very raw. He's just sitting kind of selling, and then he sells around the other side of the ring. It's like, it's got this nice, like, creepy feel, and of course I like it because it looks a bit creepy. Of
course,
but yeah, it's good. It's really good.
Yeah, I think some of the framing's really good, and again, you wonder how much. I think a lot of that will be, credit to the camera, the camera guys, but also there's a bit where they do the kind of three-way submission lock-up stuff. So it starts with a chin lock. It's like the three-way chin lock, and it's just framed really nicely, but you can see Ray's like just underneath, kind of like turning to the right to get in shot with the camera. It's almost like in the corner of his eye without looking at the cameraman. He sees the cameraman and he's like, guys, we're going this way. Guys, turn this way. Right, that's really cool. Do you know what I mean? And I think that must be the kind of conditioning that you get from working a TV product as much as that. So you got this. I think that's why it works really well, because you do have this voyeuristic style to it, where you're like, this is a real snapshot of a very specific moment, a very specific place in time that me, Andrew from Whitley Bay, would never have seen, whilst also having the professionality of a couple of guys in there who have worked TV and know exactly how to place themselves and frame themselves at the right time. So yeah, you get this little bit of magic, and I think that's what Punk had kind of called it. So it's nice to kind of hear, I think, to have his perspective on it, because he very much was an indie wrestler at that point, to kind of get his perspective and go, this felt like it was fucking magic at the time, is a really nice kind of way of going, yeah, like, I think it feels like that. That's it. Hang on. Right, okay, I'm back. So the match breaks down at that point. Like, there's only one bit where the match really slows down, and it's that kind of Eddie on Rey STF, Punk double deck as the lock. And then you do that's, I know when it goes into, like, there's a couple of like, or there's a leapfrog. Actually, hang on, I'm talking about the wrong thing here. Right there. Okay. I think it's funny at that point to see the 619 not being used as a trademark move. It's just used as, and it doesn't get a pop at all. Like, it gets a bit of a pop in that it's like, oh, what's that? Like, and the way that he delivers it as well, his feet go straight over his head. So the way he's trying to deliver it is like, I'm fucking like taking you out with that one, rather than the 619 that we all know, which is more of an impact, and it hits them back and makes them roll. I thought that was quite interesting. And I think for me as well, the big thing with Eddie was just like, he's so crisp. And going back to his comment of, I want to perform for, whether there's one person in the crowd or 20,000 people in the crowd, I want to perform for myself. It looks like it in here. He's just so crisp.
Something to note on that, the point that I put that in was when he does the back suplex to Rey, which we mentioned last time. But it's exactly the same. It comes with the exact same impact, the exact same emotion around it, whether he's in a stadium, arena, or whether he's in front of 100 hicks at IWA Mid-South. It comes off the same. Also, another point to pick out for wrestlers is the early stages of this match where, like, they're both pinning Eddie. Eddie's kickouts are incredible. They are pinpoint, excellent precision out of it. The ideal kick out.
Yeah. I think so. Going at the finish of this match, I actually really, really like the finish of this, and I find like sometimes with indie matches, like the finish is the thing that is difficult to kind of land. And without really seeing much of CM Punk stuff at this point, I don't know what kind of finishes were like. I would imagine if you're doing a lot of 45, 25, 30-minute matches, they're kind of like, we're both fucked, one arm over them type thing. So the finish to this, I thought was just really, really cool. Did anyone hear the call from the fan just as before they go into the finish? Some fan shouts out, "This is the greatest Nitro ever," which I thought was a funny little bit, which then literally leads into that assisted Rana, like the leapfrog kind of assisted Rana. But my favorite bit of this is when they come out of that and Eddie just fucks Ray out of the ring, and like he throws him so far, and I think Ray's selling of that. Like Ray just scoots off out through like the second or like the bottom rope. I don't know how he scoots out of it. It's very low. He scoots off out of it, and it looks like he's gone into like hit the back wall, and then he hit the frog splash, which is just fucking. It's lovely, but he doesn't quite get the elevation, which I would imagine is like probably those ropes. And then Ray is too slow to get back in and break up the pin, and you've got Eddie who's got the belt. And I kind of think like I was expecting a bit more from the crowd. I thought the crowd were going to be like, whoa, but they're like, so I'm like, I think title changes were quite frequent in IWA Mid-South, and they probably were like, well, they got a show tomorrow, probably going to go back on CM Punk. But I thought the whole finish section, given that it was only 11 minutes long, the whole match, I loved it. Like I really, really enjoyed that finish.
I know that it was just a good solid finish. Like it's nice, it's timed well, as is everything in the match. Everything is like excellent timing. Sometimes like do an absolute fault that it's like, damn, that couldn't have been placed any better. I think this falls into it as well, where it goes bam, 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 we're out 1, 2, 3, and it's just a really solid finish.
Yeah, and I think it plays into Eddie Guerrero, the character. He's the bad guy in it. Like it's bookended nicely. The start, if you look at the starting sequence, which is 3 of them trying to lock up, but Eddie kind of ducking out every time, to then the 3 of them right at the end, but Eddie fucking off Ray and getting like frog splash in the pin. I think a very nice way of telling that story. So we still don't really have a rating system. Is this bare ass or Bear Good? I don't know. Bear Grylls?
Did we come up with a top one last time? Or did we have the funds?
I just think we had like. What was your feelings towards it? I think this match was. I don't think it was as good as Ray versus Eddie by any stretch. It wasn't emotion. But I think what I mentioned from the last one is that there wasn't as much of an emotional build to Ray versus Eddie Halloween Havoc. They emotionally invested you in that match, which was I think was the amazing part of that match, is that they took you from quite not a cold start, but like from the moment they walked out, you're like, right, I'm in now. I understand, and then it just built throughout. Whereas this one, I think because I knew the backdrop of what was happening outside the ring, I think it's a really interesting, and that the indies are really, that's what independent wrestling kind of has to lend itself to, is kind of, it's a snapshot in time a lot of the time, independent wrestling. It's kind of like, it's a product of what else is happening. And obviously this one was heavily built in that. So I think watching it back, and you know, all of the comments on the YouTube thing are just talking about, fuck, I really miss Eddie Guerrero. And it's like, it's so strange. It's like, yeah, you know, it would have been, you do kind of wish he was still around now, but he left such a mark, and Rey Mysterio did as well, on independent wrestling style and the style of wrestling that comes off the back of this, without really realizing how much, and seeing that he had an independent run and matches like this kind of goes, oh fucking hell, right, he really did lay out quite a lot of the blueprint for what then came.
I think this is a match that ends up being replicated, whether people know that they're referencing this or not. Definitely the feel of it is referenced throughout like indie wrestling across the board. And from like the cruiserweight style of wrestling that this sort of fits into, but like, yeah, like this is a reference point. I listened to a podcast recently from this guy called Blind Boy. He's an Irish creative artist, and he was saying that when he makes music, yes, he does.
He wears a bin bag on his head.
It's a plastic bag.
Plastic bag.
So he was talking about reference tracks and how when he's making music, he'll have like a reference album that he listens to daily that then he bases his own music around. And I feel like this triple threat is a reference track for a lot of multi-man indie matches that happen, whether people realize it is or not.
I think I like this more than the Eddie Ray match.
Visually, though, it's definitely your bag, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
Fleabag wrestling.
Yeah, it's well established. That's my thing. But I think it's because it's a 3-way that I find very interesting. And yeah, it's part of the look and the feel, and I kind of really like the roughness of it. And I think whether the story is intentional or not, it's like the in-ring story of like this guy who is like, this is his kind of turf. He's having to hang with these two more polished dudes, more experienced dudes, I think kind of comes across in a lot of the stuff. I think I prefer this to the other one. That's not saying that the other one was fucking great as well. But yeah, I think because it's a 3-way that I don't despise, maybe that's swaying me.
Yeah, I think that's a point to make actually with it. It is a very good example of how to do a 3-way match, especially on the indies, and keep it short and concise and tell a story within it. So yeah, thumbs up from me. Maybe not as much as last match, but
what's that mean? Bare balls?
That's a rating system that we had, wasn't it? It was bare balls that was top, bare gooch was the middle, and then bare ass was the end. Right? That's
That's what it was. You didn't call it the gooch, you called it something else.
Taint.
I think this is bare balls for me. Big bare balls.
Yeah, I would say bare balls.
And
well, if we play another game of The Price is Right, I would say that this is less than the Eddie Ray match in the chain. But Rory, you would say that it's...
I would say so.
Yeah.
It's a step down. It's a little step down.
Yeah, I think it's more than, because it's in a fucking bingo hall.
Yeah, exactly. So where do you think we can go from this? I guess it like keeps it open. We were gonna go Lex Luger last time. I, for one, am quite glad that we didn't go the Lex Luger route. I think there's
IWA. We could do
I think this has kind of opened up a little bit. It's opened up a little bit more to kind of go down more of a modern route, or a route that's probably like more grounded in the stuff that we're probably influenced a bit more by. Maybe not you, Rory. I know that you prefer your older stuff. But I guess from here we could go more IWA Mid-South. There's a bit of Tracy Smothers stuff in there. We could go. We could move over to. We had Simon on one of our social media channels. His preferred chain route would be Punk. After this, Punk versus Joe, Ring of Honor 2004. And then go into the Joe versus Styles versus Daniel, another triple threat match, TNA 2005, and then head towards TNA's first 5-star match, which was was that first 5-star match? Was that Bailey Ospreay?
Does Joe and Angle get the 5-star match? If not, then it'll be it'd be Ospreay and somebody. I would like to mention that it would be a shame if we do TNA without doing Motor City Machine Guns or Alex Shelley at some point, but I also understand that we'll probably come back around to that at some point.
We'll have a look at that though, but comment below.
We're really hot.
That's my thing.
Is there you need to work on doing your finger pistols, mate.
Yeah, I do. It's the wrong way.
I'd like to think every time we do that, partners go, why are we off these people?
Well, the fact that I'm doing a podcast about wrestling, Jade is like... you can find North Wrestling on Instagram, North Wrestling NCL, on X, North_NCL. Facebook, North Wrestling NCL. YouTube, North Wrestling NCL, can now sign up and access our whole archive. If you like dirty Fleabag wrestling, then we've got a lot of that on there for you too. You can go all the way back to 2016 when we were wrestling in the Riverside nightclub in front of like 100 people, all the way through to Thunderstruck in front of 700 people. And you can, I think it's $6.99.
Good price.
I don't know. Well, I'll overdub that one. Yeah. You can support us on Patreon, which you'll get this podcast earlier than anyone else. And you will get all sorts of stuff like behind the scenes stuff, Q&A with me. Is that a sellable point? And we will see you. You can find Liam. Where can we find people? Can find you on the
Twitter and Instagram, Liam_SLTR. I have a YouTube that has some matches on it as well. But if you search Liam Slater on YouTube, you'll find me there.
And Rory, where can we find you?
Find Liam and Liam IWA-MS if you search him.
You can also find me in a teabag deathmatch
Jesus,
against a certain Swerve.
Oh yeah,
as in Yorkshire
teabag, as in like Yorkshire tea.
I'll tell that story another time. Tune in next time and I'll tell the story about teabag deathmatch.
My name is X or Twitter, Rory Wrestler, same for Instagram. Merchandise, you can go to rorywrestler.com, where I've done a stock check finally and found a box of t-shirts.
Nice.
So I've got more than I thought.
That's always good. Until next time.
Goodbye.
We'll see you later, guys. Bye.